Never. That's not the way the artist works. Why is that?
Because he sees it in his mind.
It's the only way. The only way how an artist works is he actually visualizes the whole thing. It isn't that he says logically, okay, there has to be a head, there has to be an ear, let's put the ear in here. He visualizes it on the canvas. So there, and so therefore he presents it. He starts in the end, he goes all over the place, and each line that he puts in gives him, directs him for further visualization, and thereby, and that's how he's able to produce it. So that's when you're putting it, your vision onto canvas. But if you want to explain what you saw to someone else, you can't explain it that. You have to go in an orderly fashion, because he's going to go all over the place.
What did you wait a little bit?
What?
Like, by picture, when you draw a picture, you start from nothing, and then by half an hour you will see something. Can you do it like this with the person? Just tell him, hold on and whatever?
No, because he has to construct. He has to construct what you're telling him. If you're not orderly, he doesn't. He has to reconstruct it from words. He has to be orderly. So therefore, what is the method? That the first thing you have to do is erase the image. Erase the image to the point where you thought you don't see anything. And then start constructing it in your mind. This is called Tzimtzum Harish. And it says Tzimtzum Harishin Shvenishar Cholol Umokim Porish. And there remained a cholol, an emptiness. Mokim Porish. A vacant space. Any other tzimtzum does not leave a cholol umokim ponus. Tzimtzum means I'm limiting what I'm telling you. That's not a cholol umokim ponus. I have one telling you. Here I'm not limiting what I'm telling you nothing. I don't see anything. That's the first thing.
In the martial, you're saying that this thing exists, and then comes the first simsum, and then after this there can start to be an expression of what was, but in the Nimshal by the Ibsh, there was nothing. It's not like there was a world and Hashem wants to express this world, and then so to express the world there needs to be an absence to be able to express it.
There was a world. Because the Nisava HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Taiva, the Liyas L'Dira B'Tachtenim, preceded it since. What is in the creation? The creation represents a whole Seder Ishtalshus that ultimately can reveal Oirei Sefer. There wasn't a world as we know it in B'Mokim Osman, but there was a Rotzen for a world. And in order to bring out this Rotzen, there had to be a Tzimtzum. And it cannot come direct. No matter how. No matter how you try to present it, it's never going to be an orderly construction. Only it has to be first a cholol umokim pon. Okay? Umizehu shoyresh his havos hakelim. From this cholol umokim ponui comes is the shoyresh, is the root from which his havos hakelim, for where kelim came into being. Umetzius ha'elam es kulam, And then the Metzius, the presence and the existence of all the worlds. The is Havus HaKeilim, the union of Keilim. Just at this level, understanding, Shoresh is Havus HaKeilim. Keilim are in our mashal the means by which I'm expressing the inyan. The words and the structure of the words, the means by which I'm expressing. The inyan itself, when I visualize the inyan, when I see it, there is no kelim. I have the whole inyan. When I have to reconstruct it, I have to put it into words. This is called kelim. The words carry the message. The words themselves don't exist in my vision. I am constructing this. Now the words become the kelim by which I'm expressing it.
They're very limited though. They're limited, very limited. Each word is very limited by itself. Right?
Yeah. Well, we'll still talk about kelim. We just want to understand what the concept is. There are different levels of kelim. The concept of kelim is a necessity in transmitting, a necessity in world, because this is the concept of world. That in the place where the inyan is not, in the place, like I said in the Moshe, the one who has not seen it should have an idea what it is, even though he had not seen it, even though he didn't experience it. How can he have an idea? Because he has kelim. He has words and sentences and formats, formulated logic that he can reconstruct and think about the inyan. What creates this kelim? What allows? What is the shoresh? Where did the kelim come from? In your experience, there was no kelim. When you experienced it, there was no top, there was no bottom, there was no beginning. You just saw the inyan. It is the cholol mokim ponoi. Then there's a place for kelim. Then you can start constructing it. And therefore, this is the shoresh of Abba Kelim u'mitzias ho'eilom eskulam. And this is the shoresh, the beginning, or not even the beginning, that which permits the worlds to come into being. And then after the tzimtzum, this is still a quote from Avidas HaMelech. Acharat tzimtzum nim shargili hakav. Then there came what's called a kav. What is a kav? Means a line. The concept of a kav, of a line, is that on the one hand, it's a narrow path, narrow line. It comes, whichever direction comes, top, bottom, but it's a narrow path. That's called a line. Just as, excuse me, when a person speaks, you cannot say two words at the same time. He can say a lot, but each word has to take its own place. Cannot be at the same time. If you speak two words at the same time, you cannot express anything. Nothing was heard. That's the concept of a kav. But on the other hand, a kav has no limit in terms of how far it can extend itself. It can go indefinitely.
What's an example for this?
Well, the example for this is, the Rebbe once said that a person can imagine a line into space that never ends. But in our Indian, when you want to express something of a phenomenon, and you want to express it in a phenomenon, what's an experience, in words, there are two things. One, as we said, we cannot express it in words. On the other hand, if you try, after you have the mokim pomid, the tzimtzum, and you try to express it, you can speak indefinitely and every time add another notch to it. It isn't something that, okay, this is the words with which this is the limit of what I can say. There's always something that can, because by you, it's a whole entity, it's a full-fledged experience. A full-fledged experience can never be completely contained in words. And therefore it is an indefinite line. So this is what he says over here. Nimshech giloi hakav, shehu bechinas giloi ha'er. The kav is back revealing the oir that was earlier removed, or earlier misamt. Lahoyir hakelim v'ha'oilemes, to bring light and illuminate the kelim and the oilemes. What is the difference between the oil and the kelim? What is the pshat? What is the meaning of the words gilui ha'oil? The word oil, which means light, was chosen very, very specifically, very precisely, because the union of light is that it is not an entity unto itself, but it represents the mokim, the source of the light. Just like the light of a ray of the sun. The ray of the sun is not an metzius by itself. It is constantly, always connected to the sun, and it is representative of the sun. Whenever you look at light, you see that there has to be a source for this light. Light cannot be captured in a box and say, okay, I have light. It can be very bright over here, but you put a box around it, it becomes dark in there. You cannot capture light. Because light exists only as long as it represents its source. That's the definition of light. Now, coming back to our Moshe. When you try and explain and express to someone your experience, if you were the one who actually experienced it, you try to draw from that experience some words and some ideas with which to express that experience. What does this mean? That these words, even though they are words, formulated, so to speak, words in Keli, but where do they come from? These words come from this experience. Except you were able to put that experience into words. But there you're constantly drawing it from that experience. The difference between the one who had actually experienced it and expressing it in words, and then someone who heard that expression, that explanation, he goes and repeats it to someone else. Right? You've experienced something, and you explained it. Then I heard it, and I went and I told someone else what I heard. Is there a difference between what you said and what I said?
Of course.
Tremendous difference. Even though I repeated honestly and correctly what you said, there's a tremendous difference. Because when you were speaking, you were actually relating it to the source, to a real thing. I didn't have a real thing. I only had the words that I can transmit. So by you, the words were full of oir. By me, the words were not full of oir, because I only had the words. I didn't have the oir, because I didn't see it. By me, the idea didn't flow from a source, from a real source, because I only know what you said. Whereas by you, it flowed from a real source, from the reality of the experience. Okay, you got the point. So this is the pshat over here, that the kav is gilui ha'oir. This is revealing the oir. It is an oir. It's not a separate mitzvah. It's like a kelim. Like we said, a kelim, this is formed by the tzimtzum umokim pon. There is nothing. That's what the keli is. But the oir is connected to the source. That means that the oir is always representative of the source. Yes, I'm putting it into small bits so that it can come into kelim. But these small bits are relating back to the real source.
So when you said that when a person wants to relate an experience, if he tries to break it into pieces, he'll never be able to relate it until he looks at it from the perspective that it didn't happen to him, until he forgets it.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, once he's at the level where he's forgotten it, and now the kelim exists. So now, are you saying that
now he relates back. Once he had seen it,
now he can break it into pieces.
Right. When you say forget it, doesn't mean forget it as if he had never seen it, because in other words, if he actually didn't see it, he won't be able to. He forgot it. He's talking about he has to clear his mind from that experience. So now he has the kelim. Now he has to revert back, go back to the experience, and try to put that experience into words.
Is that by dissecting the experience?
However it is. The point is, the important point is here that when he speaks of it, it's still relating back to the experience. He is not just putting words from memory. He's still seeing the experience, but he's putting it into words, and as distinct from someone who hears it from him, who does not have the experience. By him, it's words without oir. But there is no oir in those words, just kelim. And this is what he says, that the kav, this is gilui ha'oir lehoir ha'kelim v'ha'ilums. The idea is to bring light to the kelim and ilums, not just to put the kelim into forms, into organized entities, but to actually bring light to them, that they have real meaning. They can relate back to their source. Does that bring you light? Okay, you want to do something?
The whole point of explaining to somebody something is that through these words, the person will be able to get the experience by himself. And then if he gets experience, then to another guy he's going to translate already experience, and then his words also going to be full of life. Of the experience that he's experienced. Not the original one, of course.
Yeah, well, that's something else already.
Yeah, but
yes, because that is possible, not in our example and experience, that's something that you saw. But if you talk about learning Chassidus, you talk about Avodas Hashem, so once one has found the sinyan in his own mind, in his own heart, in his own neshama, then it becomes real. Then he can give it over to others. Yeah. Because everybody has a neshama.
By his own means,
then it's by his own means. Yeah. By means of this kav coming into the kelim, his havus, the creation came b'pei. Ukiodua, and as we know, his havus ha-kelim, that the kelim coming into being, v'chein his havus ha'ilum is bichlal, And likewise, in general, the worlds to come into being, hu alidei hakav b'koyach hashimu. It is through the kav, b'koyach hashimu, by means of the reshimu. The reshimu, he didn't explain yet. The reshimu, this is what remains after the tzimtzum amokim pono. And we say the tzimtzum amokim pono, there's a tzimtzum, and there's a cholol. Is this cholol a complete vacancy? Then there's nothing there. There's nothing to illuminate. But then, and after that, there's a tzimtzum. There is what's called a reshima, a ration, a trace. Just like if you write something and then you erase it, so even though you erased the whole message of what was written, but you cannot erase the fact that something was written there. This is called the reshima. So, his Havas Ha'olam is, he says, this is something is through the kav, which means to the oil that comes after the tzimtzum, the oil, the real oil that's connected to the source. But the kav has to come into the reshima, into this tzimtzum place, and the koyach for reshimu, this is how the creation comes about.
The reshima is a kus. What's the reshima?
Yes, the reshima is a lakus and the kav is a lakus.
The reshima is not in this world also?
Yeah. In the reshima there is everything, all the worlds. The reshima actually is even higher than the kav, because the reshima is a ration, it's a trace of what was there before the tzimtzum. וכמוי ההיולי שנויסן כויח, כמו שכוסף במוקים אחר. The Reshima is like the Hiyuli. Did you ever hear the term Hiyuli? No. Huh? It's a Greek word, right? So Noisen Koyach. Hiyuli, the closest way that we can translate this concept, Hiyuli, is the potential. But really, it is much more refined than the concept of a potential. What is the concept of a potential? When a child is born, and it's a healthy child with God's help, and you say that he has got the potential to grow up and be a full-fledged individual. What is that potential there? The union that he can grow up and become a full-fledged individual is not hidden someplace. He's got all the beginnings and all the means by which to grow and become a full-fledged individual. In other words, his individuality is already defined in this child or in this individual, and all we have to do is just rear him and give him is my wish to grow, and he will grow into this individual. This is what we call a potential. A hiyuli is a notch above that. That is, a hiyuli is before the child is defined. But there is the possibility for the child. The best terms that I found in English to define it is the difference between the possibility, the possible, and the probable. When you say a potential, you're talking about the probable. When is something probable? When you have all the systems in place for it to happen, unless something interferes. Otherwise, probably this is the way it's going to go. When you talk about the possible, then you're talking about a much higher level. The stage above the possible is not the impossible.
I mean, even less probable than possible?
Right. Anybody with me here? The stage above the possible, you're saying there's probable, and then there is a possible. And the stage before the possible is not what you would say. If it's above the possible, means it's impossible. That's not what we mean. If it's impossible, it's impossible.
Improbable?
If it's impossible, it's never going to become possible. It's never going to become probable. The stage above the possible means that it has not yet come to the point where you could say this is possible.
Improbable. Improbable?
Well, the either it's impossible or improbable don't apply in this thing.
Like lately we were talking about the market, when a person has this carriage in a car, when it's only when a guy has gathered an idea that it can be separated, it's not even possible yet. I mean, it's not that any sort of a possibility.
Yeah, well, I had that. Let me try and explain this a little bit more directly, even though this is just the beginning of the Sinyan. When you have a piece of land, a vacant piece of land, in this vacant piece of land, you can put up anything you want. Any kind of house, any kind of structure. This in that you can put up any kind of structure there's two messages in this. You can put up any kind of structure means that it is totally undefined. It doesn't restrict you at all. On the other hand, it also means that if someone looks at this, he cannot imagine what you're going to put up here. There's no indication at all that, not only what you're going to put up, who knows that you're ever going to put up anything. It's a piece of wilderness. It's a piece of wilderness. It doesn't even come into thought that you're going to put anything up on this. Let's say a piece of land in the real wilderness, when you go outside of any inhabited area, 100 miles into the open fields. You wouldn't think, oh, this would be a nice place for a shopping mall. Shopping mall. Where does shopping mall come in here? It's not even inhabited. There's nothing there. This means that the hiyuli, in other words, the potential possibilities are not there yet. In order for this to be something that has to do with serving human beings, there has to be some kind of a human environment around in order to become a serving area. You follow what I'm saying? When human beings move in and start developing within relatively close proximity to this area, nothing happened to this. It's still a wilderness. The same weeds are still growing there. But now you start thinking in terms of, it's a piece of land. It's close by to society. What are we going to do with it? Which way does it fit into this environment? When you plot out, let's say, a town with streets and avenues, and this piece of land falls into the line of a street, even though the town has not extended itself to that point, you say that this is going to be a street. It's going to be a residential area. It's going to be a business area. Even though nothing happened yet. But it has already been mapped out based on its close proximity to a development. Okay? So this is already where it becomes probable. Before that, when people are first moving in, but nothing has been moving up, you would say, this is just possible. Anything is possible, but it's already within the realm of possibility. When it was 100 miles away from any residential area, it's not within the realm of possibility. It's not impossible. It's not within the area of existence. It doesn't exist yet.
Possible is like more relative term, no?
What?
Possible looks like more relative term. When I say impossible, it means impossible.
That's right. We're not talking about impossible.
Right, exactly. So when you say possible, it's relative.
Yes, all of these terms are relative. My point is, and this is Begashmius, because Begashmius, the piece of land hasn't changed. It was there before. That's, it's only a concept that from which we can grow and understand what is the concept of a hiyuli. That as in the person's in the koyach hanefesh of a person, also there is this level of the hiyuli. Every koyach exists on the level when it's a koyach, and exists at the level where it is a hiyuli. It's called a koyach hiyuli. Sometimes, not now, we'll discuss this, but the concept over there is that every action that a person takes, every koyach that a person has, is not created at the point where he is using it, but it is actually rooted deeper down in the nefesh. And it has a root in the nefesh higher and higher. When this koyach becomes a hiyuli, this is already a source for this koyach eventually to coming into function. Before that, it's not even a hiyuli. So the Rebbe says like this: the rishimo is similar to hiyuli. The rishimo is similar to the hiyuli. And this hiyuli is noising koyach, this gives the koyach to be able to, for the kav. In taking our mashal of the experience that a person has, and then trying to express the experience and explain it, taking back our mashal. At the time when he decides that there is another person here who has never seen it, and he begins to imagine this concept, someone who has never seen it, he wants to put himself into his shoes. Someone who has never seen this, who has never experienced this. No, I'm saying this is the tzimtzum, right?
Roshim is after tzimtzum.
Right, one second. I'm going back to our motion, right? The first thing he has to do is make it tzimtzum.
Right.
What does it tzimtzum mean? That he wipes away the thought. Why does he wipe away the thought? Because he recognizes there is someone here who has never seen it. And he has to put himself into those shoes. He has to put into that perspective. Like there's someone here who has never seen it. And this creates, as we said, a kind of a room for the other person in his mind. That he'll be able to relate to him. And then he's able to draw from his experience and explain it to the person and relate it to that person who has never seen it and be able to express it. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
This stage where he actually relates in his mind to the person who has never seen it, this is what allows him to formulate and create the expressions that he is going to give in order to explain it to him. Even though the idea itself has to come from his memory, from the experience. But how does he formulate it? He formulates because it goes through that process, that place. He goes back to his original experience and brings it back to the place where he has never seen it. And this is where it formulates. This gives the koyach for him to be able to create those sentences and that picture, and recreate that picture for someone who has never seen it.
It's a between Mokimponu and this Yeshima is just Mokimponu is with negative connotation and the Rishima is with positive connotation, yeah? So there is like
the Rishima is in the Mokimponu.
Right.
And this Rishima gives the koyach to recreate the scene.
I don't know why would you need to bring this thing in the picture? What's wrong with this Rishima thing? If you made a more compounded letter, right? So you have a room to bring the broken down experience in the pieces in the words or whatever. Like I don't talk about emotion, not
Right.
over there I don't understand anything. So,
Right.
So why do you use your calf, the thing that you're going to shine? That's what's going to bring the explanation from all there. So from your what is Yeshiva for?
The Rishima is like this. While you have the full experience of the full impression of what you have experienced, of what you've seen, so you're involved in that experience. When you remove it from your mind, so now you're not experiencing it. Right? So if not experiencing it, so what is there? That's right. What is there to give? What is there to give? You still want to give. Why? Because there's a Rishima. Therefore, this is the koyach with which you ultimately give it out. Okay. That's it, right? Oh, this is something else. It's a new one.